Hello, Book 2. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner, and it is time for a review. So, I just finished this book, John Connelly's The Book of Lost Things. This story is set during World War II, but World War II is not as it's in the story, but it doesn't play a big role in the story. So you have our main character, David, and his mom has just died of cancer. And he's still grieving her death. And it's only been like a few months or weeks, I don't remember. And it's just him and his dad, and they both are very much struggling to cope with this loss. But David's dad eventually meets Rose and falls in love with her. And they end up getting pregnant and getting married. And David is not too happy about that. He feels like this woman is taking his dad's attention away from him. He's resentful of his new baby brother's existence. He is just not having this. He thinks that his dad did wrong for already moving on with his life, and he feels abandoned by his dad. And then on top of that, because of the war, and his dad being a mathematics professor, his dad is recruited by the government to help the war effort. So David ends up having this big fight with Rose, and he gets punished by his dad. So that night, he ends up sneaking out of the house and discovers a magical portal into another world in the backyard, and finds himself stuck in that world. And he meets a woodsman who offers to help him to find his way back home, and thinks that maybe David can receive help from the king of this world, although he has become much older and has not been a great king since then, has weakened a lot. But this king has a special book, a rare book that might be able to help David get home. And also, this is very much a quest story, and along the way, he is also being chased by these creatures known that are half man, half wolf, these loops, and who want to take the kingdom away from the king, and, take over. And he's also being chased by this mysterious figure who he's already been haunted by in his own world, the Crooked Man, who tries to manipulate David and convince him he can give him what David most desires and send him home. But he also has to give David his new baby brother's name, Georgie. So this is as I said in my update videos, this is very much a book about it's a fairy tale-like book. And it's, like Alice in Wonderland type vibes, or like maybe even Wizard of Oz, where you have this young character who is not happy with the situation right now in his life, and ends up going into another world where he goes on this adventure and learns more about himself, and kind of starts to be forced to grow up in a very unique way and mature. And he ends up ends up having a very different mentality. So this is a very wholesome story. I feel like kids can read it, but I will say this, that it does get pretty brutal and gruesome. And like how the loops were made was a little bit weird, and like just, it's just like, okay, then we're going there, aren't we? And so it was kind of a little bit just like a little too weird for my taste. And this weird thing also came from the fact that we're trying to retell, the story was retelling the Little Red Riding Hood, doing a more disturbing version of the Little Red Riding Hood story. And it also they also have unique takes on other fairy tales. Like at one point, David meets the 7 dwarves in Snow White. They're not exactly how they are in the original fairy tale. Like especially, they're definitely not like the Disney versions of the characters. Um, which was actually kind of fun in a way. Especially with the way Snow White was acting. They are very colorful characters. We also have there's kind of a new take on the Rumpelstiltskin story. Um, I can't remember what the other ones were. The prominent ones were probably like the Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White, the 7 Dwarfs, and the Rumpelstiltskin story. Also, so I was wondering what other people thought about this book. I was looking on Goodreads, and there were some people who commented on the writing style as being, they were like, what happened with the show not tell rule? And I actually think in this case, I was okay with it telling rather than showing sometimes, because it's like John Connelly is doing this like a fairy tale. He's telling it like it's a fairy tale. And a lot of fairy tales were written in that way, where they were very telling the person reading the story rather than showing things to them, because they did not have time to really, because it's especially because fairy tales were originally meant for kids, like to teach kids lesson, and they were often told orally in the beginning until the printing press and they got written down. So to me it makes sense that he does a lot of telling rather than showing, because this is a fairy tale. But there also were a lot of descriptions. Like David has to do a lot of fighting and with a sword at one point, and he gets brutal, and there's flesh being torn apart, animals eating people. One of the antagonists he comes across, the secondary antagonist, is this huntress, who, when I last updated you guys before I finished the book, or well, actually not today, because today I kind of updated a little bit in my book haul, but before that, the other day when I talked about this book, I felt like the character of the huntress kind of reminded me of the woodsman in the 10th Kingdom. Their logic is not the same as ours, and it's just like, this is how it is, and we see it as crazy, but to them, that's their logic. That's how the world is. That's how the world works for them. And I mentioned also that she gives me the Island of Dr. Moreau vibes, because like she's tired. She is like tells David, "Oh, I'm tired of hunting animals. I want to hunt humans because they're much more interesting prey." So some of the things that she does is very creepy. But she's kind of a unique antagonist, kind of fun antagonist for this story, because like she's crazy. So she gave me a different kind of vibe. A very very deadly kind of vibe. They actually also, it's interesting that throughout the book they do explore that whole more beast than man theme, like the difference between being human and being a monster. Like I feel like it explores that theme, because you have this woman who is physically human, but she hunts people. And then you also have these creatures, these loops that are half wolf, but they kind of want to be men. They want to be men. They want to be human. So it definitely, and then even the main antagonist, the Crooked Man, they kind of talk about it a little bit with him as well. He was a scary antagonist. He was a master manipulator, and there were times where actually, for a second, I thought, oh, maybe he's going to turn out to not be so bad. It definitely pulled me in for a little bit, like, because he's very much, you know, like, I'll give you what you want, but you have to do this one little thing for me. And of course, you have our main character, David, who's just a naive kid who believed it, and also he was very vulnerable to the Crooked Man, because the Crooked Man, the Crooked Man had this mentality of all people are selfish. And some of them, you could see his points, you could see why he would be led to think that way. But he also believes in the more negative traits and more negative aspects of humans. The selfishness, the cruelty, the negative, the anger, and the jealousy, and he relies on the fact that David wants his father all to himself, and is angry at his dad for falling in love with someone else, and the fact that David resents his new baby brother existing, and resents his new stepmom, which that part of the story, with how David felt about Georgie, made me think a little bit of, what is, that story with the one with Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie, Labyrinth, that's what it's called. Labyrinth, with how she wanted to get rid of her baby brother because he was annoying and she was stuck babysitting him. And the Goblin King decides to kidnap his brother and everything, kidnap her brother, and she has to go on a quest to save him. It kind of gave me, I was thinking about that with David and the Crooked Man being like, all you have to do is give me his name. And I'm just thinking the whole time, like, David, names are important. You cannot give this guy his name. As far as David as the main character, I really, there are times when I got very frustrated and patient with him, but I'm also an adult. And as an adult, I know that you cannot trust the Crooked Man, but he is a naive kid who's angry and emotional and hurt and feels abandoned, and like him and his dad are not communicating. Like, I think that's part of the problem, is that they didn't really have a chance to really communicate, talk about the situation. Like, the dad was just like, I'm ready to fall in love with someone else, and I want to marry this woman, and now she's carrying my new child, so just be happy for me. Like, he didn't really talk to David, and at the same time, of course, to be fair to the dad, he didn't really have time to talk to David about it because the war was happening, and he was also grieving too. But that dynamic was very interesting. I feel like the biggest problem between the two of them is they did not communicate. Because David is a kid, he doesn't understand. But he was a very sweet boy, very brave. And it's just a coming of age story for him. The two good characters that were helping David, the woodsman and the knight, were good characters in personality. They really cared about David. They were protective of him. I feel like the woodsman was kind of like a father to David. And then you have the knight, although he said he wasn't really, he claims he's not a knight. He is very cynical and has lost faith in humanity. So I think he's a little bit more interesting than the woodsman, as a character, because, he's struggling with his belief in people and humanity, and he sees good in David. He realizes David gives him hope, I think, that there is still good in this world, that there's still light in this world. And he still will try to help people because, he was a knight. He's also a character, was a little interesting for a character that has become cynical. He's also a character that is gay, and for that experience, for people that are gay, there's not a lot of people in this world who accept when you have that struggle, that don't always accept that sexuality for you if you are gay. And so it's kind of like he probably met a lot of people who judged him for being in love with, I think his lover's name was Raphael. I think I'm remembering that correctly. And that's who he was searching for. He was trying to get back to him and see if he survived, if he was still alive somewhere. That was his mission, and he, asked David to help him. And of course, you have the Crooked Man uses that against them and manipulate, and is like, oh, that's not right. That's unnatural, and he's gonna think dirty thoughts about you. And of course, David is the kid, and he doesn't understand. He doesn't, even though this man has been nothing but kind to him, and very, and he's not done anything inappropriate to him. He's just been a friend, and helped David along trying to help David. But he is easily manipulated by the Crooked Man because he's very angry and frustrated and just wants to go home. And of course, all he probably knows is a man and woman get together and make a baby. He just there's a mom and a dad. He doesn't see the nuance, and there's difference. He doesn't understand sexuality yet, and that there are people who feel have different sexual preferences. He doesn't understand that because he's still just a kid. So he's very perceptible to the Crooked Man telling him, oh, something's wrong with this man. He's unnatural. So it does talk about that. It includes that themes of that in the story as well, but it's not like the main part of the main conflict. It's just, or it's like a, part of what, I think David's relationship at first with the knight. And so it also goes with the whole fact why he might be cynical, because he might have met a lot of people who were antagonistic to his relationship with Raphael, and making him feel like, oh, that's unnatural. How dare you? And so he's one of my favorite. Out of the good characters, and of the hero type characters. So this world is so creepy though, and I would love to explore more of it. And there is a sequel to this book, The Land of the Lost. And so I hope they explore. I hope that means that, because it's called The Land of the Lost, it's the land of lost things. I hope that means maybe we're going to explore more of this world. I think that would be really fun. So yeah, great characters, a really creative world in my opinion. It explores a lot of adult things that I think also kids obviously can connect with as well. Both kids and adults can relate to. And yeah, just a really fun, a little bit different of a fantasy than fantasy world than I'm used to. Like, I definitely don't read, it's been, I need to I want to read more books that are, about kids going into fantasy world, and, that are a mix of adult, not just middle grade, but adult books that kind of deal with that that type of story, that type of theme. So yeah, I would recommend this to young adult or adult. Like I said, it does get pretty brutal. There's the wolves eating flesh, and like I said, it talks about a lot of adult issues. And then there's the woman David has there's sword battles with swords and stuff like that, and people getting killed, and at one point it does kind of go on the nose with some of the, the message of David's now no longer a little kid anymore. He's losing his innocence. Like, it kind of at one point says a line that is very like, yeah, this is what's happening. Like, so that might have been a little on the nose. Better than that, it was still, I very much enjoyed this book. And I check it out if it sounds like your kind of thing. So if you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified about my latest videos. And I will talk to you all later. All right, bye!